Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and today I want to talk a little bit about sleep. Um, Sleep is something that I have had so many complaints about. I have trouble sleeping sometimes. Lots of people that I know have trouble sleeping sometimes, or more than sometimes. Sleep is really, really hard, and it's one of those things that, people go to bed and they dread going to bed because they are not worried they're not going to be able to sleep. So today we're going to talk about a very narrow part of sleep. Sleep is a really big topic, but we're just going to talk about a really small part. But this video is going to be helpful for you for two reasons. So number one, it hopefully will give you, I've got about five tips that you can implement today that should help you start sleeping better. And number two, if you still have trouble sleeping tonight, you can put this video on and maybe it will help you fall asleep. I'm fascinated by this stuff and the whole physiology behind this, and I don't know that everyone shares my enthusiasm, but that's okay. So why do we sleep? We don't really know. There's lots of different theories about why that might be, but we know that it's essential. And really what we can all agree on, all the scientists can agree on, I don't study sleep myself, but all the scientists who do can agree that it's essential for rest and repair. So when we sleep, our body takes all of the junk from the day before and kind of cleans it out. Our digestive system has a lot of stuff happening with don't want to say massive clean out, but sometimes, right, you wake up in the morning, you have a nice bowel movement. That's a product of having time to sleep and digest and move things through the system. So sleep is really essential for repair and rest. And what happens when we don't get sleep? If you've ever had a night or two nights or a week without sleep, you might know just how awful you can feel. So physically, you're exhausted, you can't keep your eyes open, you can't think, you can't focus. You might actually feel like fatigue in your body, right? So your muscles might not be working, you might be moving slow, and emotionally, it's really hard to make decisions. It's hard to regulate emotions sometimes. Think about kids when they're tired, right? So young kids who are really tired and they maybe don't have the vocabulary to explain that they're tired. What do we see in them? We see a lot of tantrums, we see a lot of meltdowns. Adults are the same, maybe less tantrums and meltdowns, but definitely some emotional regulation's hard. So anyone who suffers from anxiety, depression, or anything like that, not getting enough sleep can really aggravate those symptoms that they feel. So sleep is broken up into several different cycles, and the most important cycle of sleep is REM sleep. So early on in the night, we kind of go through our early sleep patterns, and then we dip down into REM. And the hope is that we're going to get several of those, like several batches of those sleep cycles over the course of a night. And REM is really important because that's where a lot of the repair happens. So in REM, there's a couple key things happen. So this is where hormones tend to be secreted at night. So testosterone is produced during REM sleep, but another big one is growth hormone. So in kids, growth hormone is a necessity to actually help them grow and develop. But in adults, growth hormone is essential for, again, repair and fixing stuff. So if you have an injury and you need, it's going to repair itself, getting into that REM sleep and having that surge of growth hormone during that phase is going to be really helpful. Back to kids for a second. So if they're not sleeping as well as they should be and they're not getting into those REM phases, it could interfere with growth hormone production and general growth overall. We also know that REM, the amount of time you spend in REM sleep, directly impacts your longevity. So the people who get better REM sleep are more likely to live longer. I don't want to say that to stress you out. So none of this is meant to be stressful because stress inhibits sleep. But I just want to emphasize the fact that sleep is really important and that getting a good night's sleep is by far the most important thing you can do for your health. So even before eating well and moving, although those are very key as well, but before you can do those, getting a good night's sleep is a priority. So generally I see people have one or more of three problems with sleep. So first off, they have a hard time falling asleep. They might go to bed and lie awake and toss and turn for 20, 30, 40 minutes, maybe hours sometimes. The second one is they have a hard time staying asleep. So they can fall asleep, no problem, but they wake up throughout the night. Sometimes we're aware of these wake ups and sometimes we're not. And thirdly is they wake up early. So they might wake up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and have a hard time getting back to sleep. So usually sleep disruptions fall into one or more of those categories. And today I'm just going to talk about having a hard time falling asleep, because each of those is like a PhD thesis worth of information, right? So we're going to focus on one thing and one aspect of that one thing. And what I want to talk about today is helping you to fall asleep at night is the hormone called melatonin. So I'm sure you've heard of melatonin. It's pretty well known. Melatonin is produced by the pineal gland, and it's actually one of the first supplements that we jump to when people are having a hard time sleeping. Like your neighbor might say, "Hey, couldn't fall asleep last night. Try some melatonin. I heard it's amazing." I'll talk a little bit more about supplementation a little bit later, but that's melatonin's job, is to make you feel sleepy. It's part of the role. There's a few things, but it helps to make you feel sleepy and to start to fall asleep. So melatonin is triggered primarily by darkness. So as the sun goes down, and as the lights get lower and things get darker, that's when melatonin production starts to increase. Melatonin is also really tied to our circadian clock, though. So what you do, like how your circadian clock sets itself first thing when you wake up in the morning, is also going to play a role in when melatonin gets triggered later in the day. So these are 5 things that, not involving supplements, but 5 things that I want you to try that we should all be doing to help improve our melatonin production at night so we are able to sleep better. So number 1, we need to work on setting our circadian or our internal clocks. So getting up at the same time every morning and going to bed at the same time every night is the first step for that. Now, I know you're going to be looking at me and saying, "Oh, Elizabeth, lame." And it is lame, sure. I say this as a 30-something-year-old mom who does this religiously now, because I'm not in my early 20s anymore, where I'm partying up on the weekends with friends. People who are younger tend to be a bit more resilient in this world, but for people who have trouble sleeping, this is really not negotiable. You kind of have to get into this rhythm. So pick a time that you can go to bed that's realistic for you, and pick a time that you wake up that's realistic for you. You might notice that we tend to do one schedule during the week and another schedule on the weekends, and that can actually really backfire. So if you've ever woken up, like let's say you sleep in, if that's a thing that you're able to do on a Saturday morning, for maybe an extra hour or two, if you've ever had that feeling where you're kind of like groggy and out of it, you almost feel hungover, but maybe you haven't been drinking or anything the night before, it's jet lag. It's because your body is used to waking up in one time zone and suddenly you've shifted it to another time zone. So it's called social jet lag, and getting jet lagged on the weekends is really, really common. Most of us do it. So the first thing, if you're having trouble falling asleep, even on the weekends, any time at all, is go to bed at the same time every day and get up at the same time every day. The second thing you want to do is get some light on your eyes first thing in the morning. So we have this thing in our eyes that helps to set that clock. It sets our internal clock, and getting daylight, doesn't need to be bright sunlight, but daylight on your eyes in the morning is an incredible thing to help set that clock. The same rule applies in the afternoon, evening. So again, depending on the time of year, depending on where you live, but later in the day, if you get the same thing, you get yourself exposed to some daylight, that also helps to kind of reset. Okay, so we know it's morning coming in this time and evening coming in at this time. So getting light actually on your eyes, not through a window, not through a windshield, not through sunglasses, but just going outside 5, 10, 40 minutes, whatever you can do is going to be helpful. Having good exposure to light throughout the day is going to help your body keep that clock, right? So it's going to be able to say, yeah, it's daytime. I know that we need to be awake. We need to be doing stuff. So if you can work outside, that's amazing. That's totally unrealistic for most of us. But even working near a window, having lots of natural light near you throughout the day is going to help keep that clock in sync. The other thing that we use to time our circadian rhythm is food and meals. So if you can eat at roughly the same time every day, that's really going to help set your clock as well. Okay. Moving into the evening now, it's time to think about light. So we know that light can be a problem, or too much light in the evening. This is not news to us. Too much light in the evening can be a problem. So what you want to start doing is turning down the lights. Overhead lights tends to be really bright on the eyes. If you can use lamps or something like that, that tends to be a little bit better. Our devices now tend to have blue light filters. So I'm sure you've heard you have blue light glasses or blue light filters. Actually, exposing yourself to blue light during the day is what we want. So if you're using blue light blockers during the day, that's going to have the reverse impact. You should be saving your blue light blocker, whether it's through your screen or through your glasses or something, for the evening. So that's really going to help the melatonin production as well. If you can work with low light, or operate, I shouldn't say not necessarily work, but if you can operate with low light in the evening, if you need to use a nightlight or kids need to use nightlights, use a red or a green nightlight instead of like a white nightlight. That can be a lot less stimulating. And absolutely no light in your eyes between 11 at night and 4 in the morning. Okay, so that's kind of a crucial time where we shouldn't be exposed to any light. So how you go about doing that might be, blackout curtains in your room, or using the right night lights if you need them, not having your phone on by your bed. So the light from the phone can be really stimulating for people and problematic. So those are the 5 key things: getting up at the same time and going to bed at the same time every day, getting light in your eyes in the morning and the afternoon if you can, working near a window throughout the day to make sure you're getting enough light and or sunlight, eating at the same time every day, and really trying to turn those lights down at night to make sure your eyes aren't stimulated. So if you can incorporate those 5 things on a regular basis, you're more likely to have a really good production of melatonin when you're supposed to, and be ready to go to sleep when it's time for bed. The quick thing I'm going to say about supplementing melatonin, I'm going to do a whole other thing about supplements and sleep, so I'll just quickly say that I haven't seen it that effective. I've had a lot of people try it. It works in about 30% of people that have tried it, and that's generally it. So I'll speak to that more in detail another time. If you use melatonin and it works for you, that's great. But if you aren't using it, I think I'd rather see you try these 5 other lifestyle things to implement before jumping to the melatonin supplementation. So hopefully you've learned something about how you can help yourself fall asleep better at night, or you're sound asleep by now and I've helped you in that way too. I hope you have a great day, and let me know if you try any of these and if they work for you.